Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we start, we just want to introduce you to our sponsor. Our sponsor is the Twitter handle @MugsNFL. They're a company that offer a range of custom items such as mugs, t-shirts, crewneck jumpers, and hoodies, all customized with your favorite sports player or your sports team. That can be any sport ranging from the NFL through to the NBA to UK sports. All you have to do for an extra 10% off your order is drop them a message on Twitter quoting our podcast, that is the Hardwood Hoops podcast, and they'll get 10% off your next order. Cheers and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. This is episode 30, the Steph Curry episode, some would say. And I'm joined by my much worse-looking co-host, Ben Jones. How you doing, mate?
Goodness, throwing shade early. This is unbelievable. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very well. Looking forward to another episode.
Yeah, definitely. 30 episodes in. Absolutely mental in the pandemic, but we haven't got much else to do, so let's keep going.
Yeah, rock on.
So the plan for today's pod is we're going to go through a little bit of news as always. We haven't got much in the way of news, just a couple of bigger stories, which is good. And then we're going to go through our 5 intriguing free agents. We picked 5 each. We don't know each other's lists, so we're going to go through and talk about some of those guys. And then after that, we're going to go on to a little piece I like to call the trade machine, whereas I'm going to pick out a player's name, and Ben's going to tell me where they're getting traded to and why. Or maybe even if he thinks they won't get traded as well. So that should be fun.
Yeah, off the cuff, so could go horribly wrong.
Yeah, I've given Ben absolutely no clues on any of the people for the trade machine. They're quite common names. I haven't stuck in some absolute random Boban Marjanoviches, but we'll see how we get. So let's start with the news then. We mentioned it a lot in the last podcast about the NBA's plan to return. And we've had a little bit more news on this. So if the date is the 22nd or Christmas Day, whichever they choose, then free agency, Ben, will start 1 or 2, hopefully, days after the NBA draft. They're not going to wait to the 1st of December.
Okay.
We kind of already knew that in a way, unofficially, because we said before there's absolutely no way you can start 22nd December when you're having free agents sign on the 1st of December. It wasn't enough time. But what are your thoughts on ramping that free agency period up to just after the draft? I know it's going to cause anyone like us who makes basketball content a busy month.
Yeah, it makes it busy, but the sooner the better, I think, for all teams, because if they can make those changes early and lock in their teams, the earlier they do that, the better, because we're still not 100% on when the season's going to start. So if they can get their squads full, get them together, get them how they want, and get into a training camp, then it benefits everyone, surely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the teams need more time. The only negative side is we have heard this week, since we last recorded, that some players and agents and a couple of NBA team officials, probably teams that made it into the late playoffs, we assume, they want the season pushed back again to start on MLK Day, which was the kind of original plan, which is in January. There's meetings today, I believe, and Monday if it needs it to make a finalised plan. But it looks like it's going to be 22nd of December or MLK Day. So we kind of have to wait and see. And I know, not for our busy calendars, but for our basketball fans out there, we're all going to want it back sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Christmas Day games will be missed if we can't get them on. But I'm still confident they'll go with the 22nd. I think the $500 million difference that I mentioned on the last podcast will kind of lead the way there. And if they want, they could kind of flex the teams that made it late into the playoffs to give them less games, so they'll play less between December and January, and then they can just catch up their games later on. That's another option that's being discussed. It'll mean we might not get as many Lakers games, or LeBron players like that might not play if we do get them on Christmas Day, but I think it will mean that we get more games in general, so not a bad thing.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Nice. So moving on to our other bits of news, a couple of personnel news. Mr. Daryl Morey, who obviously led the Rockets to their small ball, their three-point shooting success, has decided to join the 76ers. He's going to be head of basketball operations. I'm not sure what this means to Elton Brand in the long term as GM, because they haven't really got a prior relationship. But in terms of a hire for the team, for the franchise, Ben, I think it's a really good one. He's got a past relationship with Doc Rivers. They know each other well. Apparently, he wants to build around the two stars and not trade one of them because they want to see what they can do and develop a new style of basketball with the players they've got and add some free agents if they can. What was your thoughts on the hire and how do you think he'll do it in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I like it for the 76ers organization. I think he's got a proven track record of doing well. I'm just not 100% convinced he can do it with the personnel that they have there. Maybe they'll give it a half a year or whatever and just see what the results are, and then do like the Cavs did in, when was it, 2017, just wholesale changes, just like trade everybody, get a fresh new team in for the second half of the season. I don't know, because like you said, he's got that track record, especially lately, of coming into that small ball, and this 76ers team is the biggest team in the league. So one extreme to the other here. I'm really interested to see how he gets on, though.
Yeah, I think he's well known. He's a big believer in analytics. I've read his book and it's really good. And he encourages three-point shooting, which is something they don't have. So even if he wants to keep the stars, the only positive to that would be if he wants three-point shooting, he's going to have to add that all around them, which is kind of the only thing that me and you have said the whole time they need to do. That if it's going to work, and we both aren't sure if it will, but if it is, you're going to have to put three shooters with those two players. So if he can do that, and we can see then, does it work, does it not work? I think you get more of a final picture rather than this mismatch team that Philadelphia put together the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And also, he's not scared to make a big trade. He made that Harden trade. He's made the Westbrook trade. He's made the Chris Paul trade. So if he thinks it's not working or there's an offer out there for any of his players, I think that he'll kind of push the button on that. And if I was a 76ers fan, I'd be excited with the prospect that you have no idea what's going to happen the next year, which is quite exciting, I think.
That's probably why they brought him in, though, that they know he's strong enough and has the commitment to make those big decisions when it comes to it. Because I think there's a lot of GMs and stuff in the league that would look at an Embiid or a Simmons and really struggle to pull a trigger on a trade for one of them because of who they are and what they could mean to the city or the team. Whereas Daryl Morey just will do whatever's best for the team, or whatever he thinks is best for the team, and just go for it. So,
yeah, he's definitely a man that's confident in his own abilities, which is good. I'm not quite sure how the relationship will work with Doc. I think they have different basketball styles and opinions, but obviously that they both kind of probably knew that they were going to be hired, so they've obviously had conversations to talk about that. So I think that they'll iron those issues out and try and create some sort of style that fits that team. But I'll be quite confident they'll be a very good defensive team. The Rockets have been good defensive team with not many amazing defensive pieces. And Doc Rivers, before this season, always prided his teams on defense, didn't they? And kind of getting up the floor as well. So I think that they could have at least a good defensive team, which will be a start. But overall, good hire. It's a 5-year deal as well, I believe, and he's going to get paid a lot of money, as per. And apparently, he got offers from soccer teams, as they call it over there, NFL teams, baseball teams. A lot of people wanted him to come and kind of lead the analytics for their team, but he decided to stay in the NBA, which is good for any NBA fans.
yeah, definitely.
And let's move on to a team that he knows well, the Houston Rockets. They finally hired a head coach. It wasn't a name that we mentioned in our top candidates, but it fits our idea that we both thought they would hire someone who would be a cheaper head coach. We know the owner's not keen to spend more money. He doesn't want to go into luxury tax. He doesn't want to hire people on huge wages at the moment because of the pandemic. And they decided to hire Stephen Silas, who is was a lead assistant at my Mavs, Ben. Luka Doncic absolutely loves him, and so does Dirk. And I think that says a lot about the personality he is. He really helped Porzingis develop as well with Luka in terms of the pick and roll actions. He kind of helped them learn those if you read the articles written about him. So I think it's a good hire in terms of what I know about him. It's sad for the Mavs to lose him because he was the next head coach in waiting for the Mavs, really. Rick Carlisle absolutely loves him, but he obviously wanted to take this step now. What are your thoughts on the hire? And I guess you're not too shocked they've gone with someone who's a bit of a smaller name.
Yeah, I think it's a good hire. It makes sense. It fits their current brand where they're sort of keeping costs as low as possible. Like you said, sensible in this kind of climate at the moment. Means hopefully they can invest more money into supporting, the staff that you'd have out there on game days and things, and keeping those guys afloat. I think you obviously know more about him than I do, coming from your Mavs. So especially if like Dirk and stuff said he's a great guy and he's a good coach, then I'm sold on him for now. It'd be interesting to see how he does stepping up into the big role, but you got to start somewhere, haven't you? And this will essentially be a fresh start for everybody. So I think it's a good opportunity, definitely.
Yeah, and from everything that I've read, at least anyway, that James Harden and Russell Westbrook both signed off on this. Apparently, they both quite like him. One of them, I don't know which one it is, but one of them's got a prior relationship with him in the summer, doing some shooting coaching. So they already know him. They both signed off on it, and I think they're quite friendly with Courtney Lee, who was a Mav who knew him quite well. So it seems like everyone in the organisation is behind the signing, which is the first step, I guess. So we'll have to see how he does, and then maybe in a couple of weeks change our coaching rankings for who was the best hire.
Yes.
We'll have to see. But let's move on now then and talk about some free agents and some trades. We'll start with our free agents. We both got a list of 5 intriguing free agents. And why don't we start off with your list? When you go through, start with your number 1, and we'll talk about each one, and then we'll go on to mine after.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to start with like kind of more basic one that's on everybody's radar at the moment, and that is Gordon Hayward. I thought this was an interesting one. So he's got a player option this year. If he opts in, I think it's 32 million he's opting into, essentially.
Yeah, a lot of money.
A lot of money for a 30-year-old with injury problems. The sensible thing is to opt in to get this 34 million. However, he could opt out and he could still go to a team for maybe like a 4-year drop down to maybe like 24 mil. I would say he's worth now at the moment.
Or even less, maybe.
Yeah, or less potentially. It's just whether he wants that long-term commitment and knowing he's got the money coming in over the next sort of 4 years, or does he want to go for broke? Because I still think he could probably still be worth that after this next season. I'm sure. Well, you may talk about him in your trade segment because there's a lot of rumours about him and the Pacers at the moment.
Maybe can't reveal anything from the trade machine.
Maybe a sign and trade could be on the cards. So I found Hayward's a really interesting one. Really, there's so much he could do at this point in time. If I was him personally, I think I'd sign on and opt in. What are your thoughts on Gordon Hayward?
I think if he opts out, he's doing so with the idea that if he has a poor season this year, he might struggle to get a contract at all next year for long term.
Yeah.
So if he thinks, right, I'll strike while the iron's hot, I've got X team interested in me, because his agents are already going to know what teams want like him if he opts out. And if they're prepared to offer him 4 years for 80 million or 100 million, obviously he's earning more than that opt-in. I know he's doing it over a longer time, but if he's not 1,000,000% confident that with his injury record that he'll get a contract next summer or the year after, I could see him opting out for that reason. But I think that amount of money is going to be hard, and I think that the Boston Celtics might want him to opt in to try and facilitate a trade or to keep him rather than just let him walk away. Because if he opts out and walks away, the Celtics get absolutely nothing for him. So I think they'll be keen on him to opt in and kind of either play him or use that contract in some way. In terms of him as a free agent, yeah, I think with the pandemic and there's not loads of teams with top cap space this year, I think that he would struggle to go to a contender at least. If he hit the open market, I think he'd have to go for like a 3-4 year deal, like you said, but maybe to a team that's coming up.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure that's something that you'd want to do with all the injuries you've got. He probably knows he's not a number 1 piece anymore. So, but I think he is a very intriguing player because the level he can score at in the paint, and he's not quite as quick now due to the ankle injuries, but his defensive size, at least, is something that a lot of teams can kind of need.
Yeah, and he's good in a crunch time situation as well. He can keep his head, and he tends to pick out the right passes and make the right plays.
Good free throw shooter as well, to be fair, which is good. But yeah, I'm not quite sure where I see him ending up in terms of a free agent. I agree with you that I think he's more likely to opt in, and then maybe later on we might hear some trade news about him. We'll have to see. I have to see how the trade machine pops out. But yeah, after Mr. Hayward, who's next on your list?
My next one after Gordon Hayward, I was looking around a couple, but I decided to have a look at Nicholas Batum. Another intriguing one for me. Another player option. He's 31 years old. Before he signed the contract he's currently running out, Nicholas Batum was playing incredible basketball. Since
then, got paid a lot of money.
He got paid a lot of money. That's it. Since then, he has gone down a hill. Whether that is to do with Charlotte being a god awful team from top to bottom, or whether he has just sort of peaked and then he's now in a big trough, or I don't really know what's going on with him. He could, so it's a player option, so he could opt in to 24 million. Again, if I was him, I'd probably opt in and take the money. It just depends what he wants from his career, I think, because this is going to be his last payday for sure. Or does he want to opt out early, take a huge pay cut, and be a real contributor to maybe one of those championship contenders? Because I still think in the right system, with the right coaches and the right team around him, he could be a really, really good player and really contribute to a team. But as like a fourth option or a sixth man, those kind of things, rather than being your star, if you will. It's just which teams would be willing to stretch a little bit to sign him. That is the question. Like you said with Gordon Hayward, with an aging star who's past his peak, who's willing to pay? I don't know. He's not worth the 24 anymore. Is there anybody out there willing to pay even sort of 12 or 13 for him? I don't know. So
I think some teams would want to pay him at a mid-level, so up to like a 9 million. For a 1-year deal, sort of prove it. But I just think a player like that, who, if I'm honest, has underperformed probably the last 3 seasons, you'd say, since he got paid. I know he had an all right season, the one after, but I just think it's so risky for someone like that to opt out, because I don't think he's going to get the market he wants. But in terms of a championship team, I think anyone would pay him the mid-level. Any of those Lakers, Clippers, maybe the Warriors, a team like the Nets, for example, Miami Heat on a 1-year, teams like that, they'd be happy to have a player like that on the mid-level. But when you're turned down 24 million, and it's kind of known as well that you've been overpaid, and you're hearing that every year, aren't you, that you're overpaid and that are they going to trade your contract, all this stuff. So you must be aware that your market's depleted.
Yeah.
So for me, I could see someone like a Hayward maybe opting out with other offers, but I think a Batum is much more likely to opt in. And I think the Charlotte Hornets would maybe want him to opt in to see if they've somehow could dangle him in some sort of trade, because obviously he's an expiring contract. And I know the Knicks are one team and the Hawks are another team that have kind of said they might take on unwanted contracts to get more draft picks. So if Charlotte offered someone a second and Batum for something else, like another piece, a younger piece, they might be willing to do that. So I think he's more likely to opt in out of the two that we've spoke about so far.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Maybe your Cavs could swing a trade, a little bit of Batum, Drummond, pick and roll action.
Yeah, potentially. Could be an option.
Sounds fun.
Just depends what. Yeah, we'll talk about the Cavs at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, we will. Did you want to go to another one in the list, or did you want to hear one from me?
Go on, you go for
one. So I've got one as well that involves a little bit more of a decision, not quite an opt-in, but I've gone with Brandon Ingram, the New Orleans Pelicans. He's unrestricted, so obviously if anyone offers whatever they offer him, the Pelicans can match the offer. And if they don't match it within, it was 5 days, but I don't know if they're going to change that now with the less time. But if the Pelicans then don't match it, he'll sign for a new team. But if they match it, then he stays with them. And I just put him down because I think out of any of the free agents that's not Anthony Davis, who we all expect to re-sign with the Lakers, I think he's maybe the best player available on a free agent pool. He's certainly up there as one of the better ones, and with the age and how good he was last season. He hasn't got that playoff caliber experience, which is something that might hinder him getting a max contract. But I found him really intriguing because I'm not sure if I was another team, I'm not sure I would pay him the max. But I think if anybody does, the Pelicans will probably match it. And I'm just thinking, could some teams kind of use that against the Pelicans and offer him a deal that maybe they don't want to offer him in the hope that the Pelicans match it and kind of use that cap space whilst they've got Zion, because a max for Brandon Ingram would be a lot of money. For me, I think the best fit is him playing away from Zion. I don't think they suit playing with each other very well. I think financially he might be better off staying in New Orleans because I think they might offer him the biggest contract. But in terms of a fit, I think he'd be better off leaving and going somewhere else. But the question is, will someone match what they pay? Where do you see his value? Do you see him being a max player at that age and that level, or you think he's more of a, I don't know, 25 million a year candidate?
I think at the current time he's more of a 25 million, but in this free agent calendar, and with his potential, you could see teams offering him a max easily, and I wouldn't be upset with teams offering him a max. I think he is well on his way to being worth it. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I don't know if he's a great fit for the Pelicans long term, but what they could do is use it as like a 2-unit type thing. So a team out with Ingram and then a team out with Zion. So you've constantly got some like really high quality and high caliber players out there all the time. I think whatever comes, I think the Pelicans will match and they will stick with him for another couple of years, definitely.
In terms of other teams, then, because we haven't spoken about that as much with the other two free agents. In the betting odds and in the media, he's obviously linked with the Pelicans the most because they can match any offer, which we've already spoken about. But the teams that are coming up constantly as other options, people won't be surprised to hear, are the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. Part of that is because of the cap space. They've got enough to offer him a lot of money, and I think they've both got enough to offer him at max. In terms of Atlanta, obviously fits with their idea of getting loads of wings. They want tall wings. They want shooting wings to match with Trae Young. We all know Trae Young is probably the worst defender in the NBA, so you need size and switching with him. He fits the age profile, but he also helps them win now. And with the Knicks, we're not sure how that's going to work, but they always want a star. I believe Leon Rose used to be part of the agency that Brandon Ingram is represented by.
Right.
So they're the two kind of main links that are coming out that might offer him a big deal, and then obviously it's up to Pelicans to match. And if the Pelicans don't match, or even if they do match, which of those two teams do you see kind of being in for him? Do you think it'll be both? And if you had to choose one, which way do you think he's more likely to go?
If he has to choose, he should 100% choose Atlanta and go those guys. I think that they're obviously in the best position for him to develop with the team and become championship contenders. But I mean, if he wants that fame and fortune and that limelight, then Knicks is your way forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and you could then have a front court of RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and Brandon Ingram, which in the East is not bad.
It's not bad. They're still young as well.
Yeah, they'd have a lot of work to do, but I don't know what their aims are. Whether they probably should be rubbish again another time and wait for one more draft and then go again next year, I would say. But if they want to try and win, I think that either team could be an 8 seed in the East, obviously with moves for the Knicks. The Knicks have to make a lot of moves, but the East is obviously weaker than what he's used to in playing in the West. So I think either team can offer him a better chance at the playoffs, at least. But you don't get to play with Zion, who maybe one day could be the best player in the league, and then you've got a better chance of winning it all. So it's a tough thing to weigh up, I think.
Do you think the history of his blood clots plays a factor in any contract he gets offered?
Well, they'll be able to steal the medical records. I think that, in line with the pandemic, may, um, because I think that people would just be less frugal. Less willing to spend their money.
Yeah,
And they might be like, "Oh, we don't want to throw 35 million a year at Brandon Ingram with a little bit of medical history at a time where we don't know when we're going to get any fans in." That's when a team like, I think, the Knicks could pull away, because they're saying we're not going to win anything this year, so why would we take a risk? But if they're confident in the medical records and the owner wants to spend, then you never know. But yeah, I think it could play a factor just in terms of not how much he gets offered. I think he'll still sign a massive deal with the Pelicans, but I think other teams that don't know his history as well might be a bit more wary and maybe think, "Oh, we won't risk it on this one."
yeah,
Um,
makes
but yeah, it's an interesting one. And in terms of just going back for your two, would you say that Hayward and Batum both stay where they are for now, if you have to guess? Because I would probably say, if I had to guess, they would both not sign anywhere else in free agency.
yeah. My top option for both of those is re-sign, definitely.
Cool. Let's go on to another one of yours then. Who's next on your list of intriguing free agents?
Serge Ibaka, currently with the Raptors. He is on. I think he's on a player option as well. Where is it? Hold on a sec.
I think he's unrestricted. I think.
Ah, unrestricted. There you go. So he has had his payday again. One of those players that has hit his peak, but can still be a huge contributor to any team that signs him, basically, especially the more unrestricted free agent. So the more teams that are going for this small ball lineup, he is that perfect pick and pop center now. We know he can hit threes. We know he can play well defensively, even though he's lost a few steps athletically. He still knows how to play defense really, really well. He's currently, he's just been paid 21.5 million. I can't see him getting anywhere near that again.
No, I can't either.
Maybe a mid-teens, maybe like a 15 mil somewhere.
I
Uh,
think he could be convinced to get the mid-level at 8-9 million. I think, for the right team. If
for the
I'm
right
honest.
team, that's it. It's just so which teams out there are looking for that defensive center that can hit a three?
The
Well,
Warriors.
the Warriors, the
Yeah,
Celtics,
the Clippers.
Clippers, yeah,
I don't think they're going to sign Montrez. I don't know if he's later on your list, but I think they'll let him walk or try and sign and trade him. So, yeah, I think the Clippers could be another one. I don't think the Lakers will, because I think they like Anthony Davis at centre enough, don't they? And
yeah,
they like a bit more size there. Maybe, I'm not sure. I think
yeah.
Ibaka will want to play more than the Lakers would play him.
That
Yeah,
could be an option with the Clippers, a sign and trade with Montrezl Harrell that could sort of be a step in the direction for the Toronto Raptors to kind of rebuild or go slightly younger.
Celtics were another one that I kind of didn't think about when you said his name, but that makes perfect sense. And I
Yes.
wonder if Toronto, because they've got Marc Gasol as another free agent, I wonder if they'd be tempted to offer Ibaka a bit more money to stay for 2 years or so, because I think any of these championship teams would be offering a 1 year deal.
Yeah.
I just wonder if Toronto would turn around and be like, if they lose Fred VanVleet or someone like that and they've got a bit more cap space, they might say, "Oh, look, we'll sign you to a 2 year, 28 million, so you're getting an extra 4 million a year than you would get if you signed for a mid-level. And you could stay here for 2 years." I just wonder if they're going to try and keep one of those two bigs. But if I'm the Warriors, Celtics, or Clippers, or Nets, if I'm honest, but they have got a lot of centers, I would just be knocking this door down, because I think that'd be a perfect signing for those teams.
Yeah. There's some really, really good options out there for him. Um, and I think he might take one of these more championship ready teams for the year.
Yeah, I'd lean that way as well, unless someone offered him a 3 or 4 year deal.
Yeah.
Because then obviously it's more about your family, isn't it, and financial security,
Yes,
which I
definitely.
don't think he'll get. He had injury problems a couple of years ago, so I agree with you. I think he's going to take a 1 year or a one-on-one, like a team option,
Yeah.
to go play with a big contender. But another team that got linked is the Pelicans to him. to try and get another centre next to Zion. And if I'm honest, I don't know if that suits him the best in terms of trying to win a title, but I think he'd be a perfect centre to line up next to someone like a Zion. Another team that got mentioned was the Charlotte Hornets. That's just never going to happen.
No.
But the one I found interesting that we haven't talked about was the Miami Heat. They were linked quite well with him in terms of the betting odds, and there's been a couple of articles about it. And I just wonder, how would he fit there with some of the size they've got? Would he fit well next to a Bam Adebayo, or would it be more like when one plays the other doesn't, and we've got a deep roster? What are your thoughts on the Heat and him as a kind of pairing?
I quite like the Heat as an option.
Mm.
Would fit him and his play, I think. I think it could help Adebayo in a way because, like I said, he does have a tendency to sort of stand out and be hitting a 3 option, and then it makes other teams think, okay, who is our big going to guard? Is it going to be Bam or is it going to be Serge Ibaka here? And you could have some interesting matchups there. It's just, do they have the money to sign? Well, I guess they could find the money. It just depends how low he would be willing to go. I know that there's a couple of players up for the Heat this year as well.
Yeah, if they lose those players, they'd have financial space to sign a backer to anything up to 15 million, I think, if they lose their free agents.
So, because Kelly Olynyk is up, but it's a player option, so he'll sign back in definitely.
Yeah,
That could have been a great swap there.
Yeah, Goran, Jay Crowder, and Derek Jones Jr. are the ones that can just leave, I think, and that's a good. Well, I don't know. That's good. With what they're on this year, that's probably nearly 30 million in cap space that you'd get, or 20 million in cap space. But I could see them trying to re-sign them. You see, so I don't know if Serge Ibaka would be more of a third option because they like Jay Crowder or not.
Yeah.
The Suns are another team. They're obviously trying to win now. That's another good fit. I think he's a good fit for a lot of teams.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not going to write these down and compare notes of how many we get right. We're just going to kind of talk about them. But in your head, where do you see him going then? What would your kind of with no intel, where would you think? Would it be Boston, or you think it'd be a different team?
I think he'll sign back with Toronto, and then they'll maybe work out a trade from there. That's, I think, the top option for me. Just because I think it works for everybody.
What would they be looking to do though? Trade for more of a star to kind of replace Van Vliet if he goes, and Kawhi, and obviously Lowry's getting older. Or would they just be trading for picks?
I think they might start maybe trading for picks. I think it does massively depend on Fred VanVleet. I think he's got a huge part of that team. If he resigns with them, they can go forward with him. Maybe start looking to trade their older players. So what can you get for a Gasol? What can you get for a Lowry? And then what can you get for an Ibaka? And then go forward with the younger players they've got.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my number one option for him. Sign back up, maybe get a bit more security with the contract there, and then see what they do with you, basically.
Fair enough. I think the Warriors were very interested in Jay Crowder, but I think he played too well in the bubble, and he's kind of added an extra $5 million to his price tag. So everything you read is that they like Gasol and Ibaka, the Warriors. And I don't think, unless Boston pull off some sort of trade, I don't think they'll have the financial space to kind of get him if Hayward picks up that option. So I think Ibaka might end up in Golden State for that mid-level, play as that centre next to Draymond Green, and they can use him if they draft a centre, which rumours are they might. They can kind of use him and Draymond to help coach him up. And with someone like a Wiggins there as well, you want that culture to be strong, and everyone knows Serge Ibaka is a really good guy, and he's a real good team player, and he's a bit of a leader as well. So we've got him and Draymond kind of helping someone like a Wiggins or James Wiseman, who they might draft defensively. I think that would be a perfect signing. So I'm going to go with the Warriors. And speaking of the Warriors, there's another perfect fit for them here, but they won't be able to sign both. I've gone with Danilo Gallinari, a player that me and you both really like. Obviously, he's a perfect stretch 4/5 for championship contenders.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to sign a big deal. Personally, I think the only way he'll sign a big deal is pretty much like most of these free agents, which is with a more of a struggling team that are kind of on the up. Whereas I think he'll sign for a contender, whether it's a sign and trade deal, a 9 million mid-level, or if someone tries to create maybe 15 million-ish cap space, maybe maximum 18 to 20.
Yeah.
I think he could go there. A couple of teams I'll float out there. He's also quite funny, by the way, because he put on his Twitter page photos of him in. I don't know if you saw this, but he put like a photo of him in loads of jerseys. It's every jersey he's ever played in, and the middle one is a blank jersey, and he just put "Where will I go next?" So he's basically pieing off the Thunder because the Thunder are on that on the photo, and he's like, "Where will I go next?" Like New Jersey, new team. I just found that hilarious that he put that on Twitter. But in terms of teams, the Warriors, again, heavily linked. I think the issue with him is he suits them offensively. They need more shooting because Draymond's, obviously, as he gets older, is getting worse at shooting. But I think defensively, he's really not on like an Ibaka or a Jay Crowder level. And I think that's where they might not want him because they do like to switch everything. And if they're not sure that Wiggins is going to be, and they want Wiggins and think he can be an all-defensive team sort of player. But I don't know if he fits them enough. If he went there, they would be so good offensively, but I'm just not sure. They'd have to draft defensive-minded players to fit that if they did that. The other players I thought about, the other team, is if Jay Crowder doesn't sign, I think he'd be a good point for Miami. I think next to Bam, that would be an absolute perfect player, and next to Jimmy as well, they would suit as a three really well. And then the other two ones, which I think you might be interested in, is the Bucks. I think he'll really help them offensively. A team that we struggle to see how they're going to score enough points to win playoff games. I think he can help. And then the Denver Nuggets were another one for me. I think they need more shooting. I think they might lose Gary Harris, and I think that he could be a perfect player to go next to them. I think Millsap's up as well, so they've got money to spend that would get them 15, 16 million for Gallinari.
Yeah, I was potentially talking about Millsap because he's on ridiculous money at the moment, and that will free up so much cap space for them. I think he's on 30 million, which is obscene for what he contributes at the moment. So that frees up cap space. How do you feel about Gallinari and the Hawks? If they can't get Ingram, Gallinari could be a cheaper option for them.
Which is crazy to say that he'll be a cheaper option compared to someone so young like Brandon Ingram. Yeah, I think that'd be a great fit. I think if they keep John Collins, obviously you've got a centre there that's quite good defensively. They've just traded for Clint Capella, and they've still got a max slot, so you could go Trae Young, Herter, one of your 3 or 4 wings, and then you go Gallinari at your 4, and then Capella at your 5. Capella kind of makes up for his defensive frailties, I think. So yeah, I think that'd be a good signing. I think to go there though, they'd have to offer him that multi-year deal that we were talking about. You know, like a 2 or 3 year deal with probably more money than he would be worth to most teams. So he's just got to weigh up: does he want that money or does he want that ring? Which is similar to Ibaka, really, isn't it? But yeah, I think the Hawks would be a great fit.
Nice.
Yeah, I think he would. I think he would work well there. That'd be the player you see them getting there. That'd be your main choice for Gallinari if Brandon doesn't sign.
For both, yeah, I think the Hawks. That's who they should go for out of everybody. I think he'd be a really really good fit for them. Like you said, I can see him being great on so many teams, and he always seems to have like a year where he's incredible, and then a year where he goes a bit quiet or gets injured. So I'm hoping he continues playing really well, and Hawks would be my number 1 option for him.
Yeah, I think that. I think I want to say the Nuggets, but even with Millsap leaving, that they haven't actually got any cap space without moving players on and getting rid of someone like a Harris, like I said. But I am probably going to say that the Bucks find a way to get him. Even though I want the Warriors in a way, but I probably want the Warriors to get everyone. But I think the Bucks or Nuggets will go for him, so it's hard between those two. But I'll just lean towards the Bucks, maybe. Cool. Did you want to go for another one off your list?
Yeah. My next one I was looking at was Tristan Thompson from my Cavs. The team of centers. They don't need to re-sign him. I don't think he's an unrestricted free agent.
Okay, I was going to ask, is he restricted or unrestricted? But yeah,
No,
unrestricted helps the Cavs.
he's had his payday. What was his last one? 18 million.
Yeah,
He's going to be sort of a 9 million kind of guy now. But again, he could be that rim protector, that rebounder that a lot of teams are looking for. And we know he's got a good work ethic. He plays hard. I think he would be a perfect fit for the Boston Celtics.
Oh wow.
But
Not LA.
well, that was my other option. The Lakers is the other option. If for some reason they don't get Dwight and JaVale back, or the other LA team, he could go to the Clippers. Perfect size for them.
Yeah, and he's
There
less of
are
an
rumors.
idiot than Montrez.
Yeah, there are rumors the Cavs want to re-sign him because I don't
Yeah.
things are going very well with Drummond.
Yeah, I think Drummond was more just to get the trade pieces in, wasn't it? The picks. I think they'll let him
Yes.
walk as soon as they can.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think teams will snap him up as well. But for me, I think what will happen is I think Tristan will re-sign with the Cavs. But if I was him, I'd be looking at those championship contenders and jumping on board with one of those. Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think you're right that for him to not to win a title, but best fit in terms of everything, playing style and all that. I think the Celtics would make perfect sense. I think he'd improve them a lot. I don't know how it'd work financially. But yeah, I think they would be a perfect fit in terms of realistic fits. There's an article on the NBA.com about him as well, with a bit of intel from a couple of league officials, and they are putting Cleveland as one of the favourites to re-sign him, which is interesting on a longer term deal. And the idea is maybe they trade Drummond again at this year's trade deadline, or they release him and he can kind of just go sign for someone to try and win a ring. I'm not sure that'd be great for him. I don't know if you could live in Cleveland for that amount of time in your life, to be honest. They put honourable mention Toronto Raptors if they lose Gasol and Ibaka, which makes sense. But I think you could put that of any centre. They put the Lakers in honourable mention, obviously, because of LeBron, which makes perfect sense. But their other two teams really intrigue me. And I know we spend a lot of time talking about both of these teams, but that's because they're contenders. LA Clippers, which makes perfect sense for me. I think it's a great fit. And I think you could let Montrez and Marcus Morris, who are both absolute idiots, leave in some sort of trade, or they're both free agents, so you could just let them walk for nothing. That's fine. Patrick Peterson as well, you could leave, and that kind of gets enough money for him. And I just think he fits well. I think he adds the attitude they like in terms of defensive team player. He's a bit of a hard-nosed player if he needs to be, but he's not an idiot as like the other two. So I don't think he'll cause as much friction. So I think that they'd be a perfect fit. But the other team linked, again, is the Golden State Warriors. And that's an even better basketball fit because he gets to do even less offensively than he would with the Clippers. Because Golden State don't do as many pick and rolls as what LA do. So I think he'll sign for one of those, and I would put the Clippers as favourites personally.
They also, Golden State, love a Cleveland centre. They signed Varejao as well when he had a really good season and then got injured, and off the back of that injury, Cavs let him go. I think Golden State signed him. That's a good option, definitely. Again, he's one of those centres where if he's sensible about his decision and his use on the court and what he's worth, he could go anywhere and be a massive contributor to a real championship contender.
Yeah. It's just that financial kind of decision, isn't it, of letting that money go. I think for any of the teams, including Boston and probably even Toronto, aren't going to offer him like mega bucks. So I think he'll have to weigh that up. But yeah, I think that'll be a good fit potentially for those teams. We'll have to wait and see. A lot of centres available this year.
I know.
when you look through the list, there's a lot of centres, a position that's not that well coveted, but teams need them. Cool. All right. Next one for me is let's go with Joe Harris.
Nice.
The Brooklyn sharpshooter. I think he's unrestricted as well. this is a tough one because I think any team will want him at the right price. I think he'll be overpaid because of the lack of shooters in this free agency. In terms of teams, what I think will happen is that he'll stay with Brooklyn, if I'm honest. I think Brooklyn actually overpays and they probably pay too much. And anyone who looks at the contract will be like, you've overpaid a bit there. But the reason they've overpaid is they need that shooting. They need someone who can basically play with Kyrie and KD, not touch the ball unless it's an open shot, not moan about their usage, not moan about anything like that, and just be a spot-up shooter. And I think he fits them perfectly. My only issue would be is if a smaller team would, well, it's not smaller, a worse team would pay him more money to sign for longer. I can't see the Nets going over like a 3-year deal really, because that's when Kyrie and KD can leave after that, and I don't think they'd want to be tied into Joe Harris being their star player on huge money after 4 years. So I think they'd offer them like a 3-year. So would a team like a Hawks or maybe like a Knicks or a Bucks do like a sign and trade somehow for like a 4 or 5 year deal? I'm not sure. But I think in terms of player fit, he just fits with literally anybody who's got enough cap space. Just because of the way he plays, he's not a great defender, but he works hard defensively. But if I had to guess, I think he stays with Brooklyn to be that fourth piece alongside the stars. And I think they probably, like I said, overpay to keep him. What are your thoughts? Or any teams that you can see? And do you see Brooklyn being the destination in the end?
I 100% think he's staying in Brooklyn. I've no doubt that that's where he's going to stay. Any team would be willing to sign him, but I don't think... although he's a good shooter, I don't really know what his worth is. So I think it's going to be a bit wish-washy for him, and I think he's just going to be comfortable and stay where he is and help them stretch that floor and hopefully, fight for a championship with the team that he's already at. So that's where I think he's staying.
Cool. I think I would agree on that, especially if they overpay like I predict. I think he'll get a good wedge of money, which is good for a pandemic, getting a load of money. The next one on my list, before we go on to your last one, I think, is Christian Wood. A bit of a strange one, this. Yeah, kind of unknown a few years ago. He was in China, kind of phased out in the NBA, went to China, got turned down in China, and now he's come back, played for the Pistons, and he's been one of the most efficient stretch fours in the league last year. He's just turned 25 as well. He came into the league really, really young, and there's a lot of rumours that he's one of the most coveted free agents in the NBA. A lot of that will be because of his skill set. He's big, he's a good rebounder, but he can shoot really well for his size. And also, in terms of financial estimations, that they're talking between 12 and like 16 to 18 million. So that's like an ideal contract to pair with stars because you're not paying that huge amount of money. In terms of teams, Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer was kind of saying that he's the perfect fit for any of these contenders. And I think if Joe Harris didn't sign for whatever reason, I think he'd be a perfect player to pair next to KD. And I also wrote down the Warriors, but I think that's less likely. But for me, a surprise contender, if they don't want a center, is the Clippers. I think a player that can kind of defend on both ends and shoot those open shots that Kawhi gets everybody. I think he could be an ideal fit for them. What are your thoughts on where he might land? Do you think that the Pistons could try and offer him a load of money just to stay because they've got no other option? Or you think they just need to kind of just rebuild?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because, yeah, they could throw the money at him, but long term, how does that work out for them? Again, if he's sent, it depends what he wants. I think they will offer him quite a big amount to stick around because he is worth it. And I think if it doesn't work out, he's probably quite a good trade asset, even with a big contract on board. So I think they'll lock him up on a fairly well-paid contract for maybe 3 years. It just depends what he wants. Does he want that security now, or does he want to go for it like we've been saying all along?
He's the most different one we've talked about because obviously that G League background and being kicked out of the NBA in terms of nobody wanting him. He's not earned a lot of money, whereas a lot of the players we spoke about have already kind of had paydays, whereas that's where I think he hasn't. In terms of teams interested, apparently the Hornets, Pelicans and Knicks are interested, and I think someone like the Knicks or or maybe even the Hornets did offer him a huge deal for some reason. I think he'd sign for that financial security. But an interesting one was at the trade deadline. Apparently, Boston put an offer in. It was rejected by Detroit, so it wasn't enough. But he really fits that stretch big sort of idea for the Celtics. So could if they could get rid of that Hayward cap space, or maybe could do a sign and trade with the Pistons. I wonder if they could kind of get Wood as part of that deal. That would intrigue me a lot to watch.
Nice, yeah. I think he will stay with the Pistons, and maybe, like you said, yeah, maybe a sign and trade rather than anything else.
Yeah, I think I'd be tempted to. I think Pistons, or I am going to put down the Knicks. I don't know why. I just think that they're going to sign someone big this summer, even if it's a not big name, but just in terms of like a 3-4 year deal to get someone to add to that core, even if they want to trade him in the future, to get young pieces to package together. At the moment, they're in a predicament where they haven't quite got enough assets to pull off these big trades. But someone like Christian Wood would intrigue some teams. So yeah, I'm going to go with Knicks or Detroit, depending on basically who offers him the most money.
Nice.
Cool. Let's go to your. I think is it your last one on your list?
Final one, yeah. Final one I was looking at is Bogdan Bogdanovic, currently at the Sacramento Kings. He's a restricted free agent on about $9 million.
So the Kings can basically match any offer that comes in for him if people do offer.
Yeah, and the Kings have a record currently of overpaying for people. So whatever offer comes in, I'm sure they will try and match it. Bogdan's a funny player because playing for his country, he is absolutely incredible. Puts up ridiculous numbers and is a massive contributor. Isn't always seen in the NBA, but has had a really good year this year, I think.
Yeah.
And the Kings, I think, will desperately try and re-sign him. I just don't know how he fits with their team. I think a lot of other teams will try and get him as well because he can create a shot. His shooting's good. His handle's good. His defense is fine.
Yeah, he's in a good size as well, isn't he, for someone who shoots that well?
So I think he'll be getting plenty of offers. It's just whether Sacramento match, and I think they will, so you'll probably end up staying there. But I just thought I'd bring him up because I think he is really intriguing for many, many teams out there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of people are going to kind of target him if they can. I'd be interested to see if teams do what I said earlier. That will they overpay to hope that the Kings match it? Bleacher Report kind of reported that no matter what teams offer him, the Kings are planning to match it. So
yeah,
I think that people will try and get him, but I just think the fact that he's unrestricted will mean they'll have to stay, and that maybe in a year or two when they suck again, we could be hearing him kind of demanding a trade because obviously when you're unrestricted, you've got absolutely no choice.
Yeah.
And I would be tempted if I was him to try and sign a 2-year deal with the Kings because if the Kings match any offer and they sign you to like a 5-year, $100 million deal, yeah, it's great. The $100 million is great, but would you not be better off signing like a 2-year, $30 million deal and then hitting like free agency properly in 2 years' time? That's what I'd do if I was him, but I think he'll end up signing an offer sheet. I think you're right. And I've got a player later on, maybe, in the trade machine that might indicate why they want to sign him. Cool. Let's go on to the last free agent. He's the biggest free agent ever in the NBA. He's one of the best players to ever walk the earth. It's Mr. Carmelo Anthony. I could not put him on my list. I didn't know the players that Ben had put on his list, but Ben knew that I put Carmelo on mine because why not? He intrigued me for many reasons. Everyone knows he's one of my favourite players ever, so obviously I'm always going to be interested in. But there's a couple of storylines that intrigue me with a player like this and kind of any veteran player. So the main options seem to be Portland at the moment. They want him. He liked it there. He loves playing with Dame Lillard. Him and the coach get on well. My only worry would be when all their players come back from injury, would he be like an eighth man? And I listened to a podcast where he's kind of up for any role and stuff like that. But I wonder if when push comes to shove and you are the eighth man, whether that would work. With Portland, because of the injuries, he kind of came in as a substitute, but he basically started from the start. and he played good minutes straight away just because of injuries.
Yeah,
I know
at the position he wanted as well.
Yeah, the position he wanted. I know he went in as like a bench player. He did admit that he was going in to play off the bench, but the injuries meant he started again straight away. So I wonder if that'll be part of it. But the other murmurings are that the Knicks could want to get him back, and he could want to retire as a Knick. He wants. It's kind of well known. He wants his jersey retired there. And is he a Nugget? Is he a Knick? He played 7 years for both. And if he retired as a Knick, would that kind of be the end of his career? But the reason that this is a big talking point is Mr. Chris Paul, who we might talk about later. The Knicks apparently want to trade for him to improve their culture and obviously to be the star to get free agents in. Carmelo and CP3 are best friends. And it may just be a little dream scenario for me to see Chris Paul lining up as a Knick with Carmelo playing small forward. I just think that would be quite cool. I wouldn't help them necessarily do much this year. I think Chris Paul would really improve them. But I just think it'd be a nice way for someone to end his career who's really done what most free agents don't do. A lot of veteran players kind of phase out of the league straight away. Carmelo spoke about it on a podcast, and for him to come back, play for a contender, be talked about again on Twitter, kind of be an advocate for Black Lives Matter again because he's in the NBA. I think it's a cool story if he could finish his career somewhere like that. So that would intrigue me.
He's still a prominent figure, isn't he? And he's still a massive contributor. I think me and you have both said I think he's a better stretch four than he is a small forward. But it just completely depends on what he wants. If he wants another shot at a title, then stay with Portland. If he wants a bit of extra money and potentially his jersey retired and to bring on younger players, the Knicks is forward.
Or play with CP3, for example. But
yeah,
my issue with Portland is, I know you've got to be positive, but I wonder if he would sit down and be like, look, I could sign for Portland and Ariza comes back and Hood comes back, great. But are we going to beat the Warriors? Because you'd have to beat the Warriors, at least two of the Warriors, Clippers, and Lakers, and Nuggets in a 7-game series to get to a finals, just to get to a finals. And I wonder if in his head he'd be like, that's still unlikely. And kind of take the other offer. I'm not sure. I wrote down that Denver could do the same. Denver could kind of bring him back to the team that drafted him. And I think for them, with Millsap going, he'd be quite a good stretch for a lot less money.
Yeah.
And obviously, at the end of my notes, I'm going to put the dream move would be signs for the Nets or the Warriors and wins a title, because I think he would at least be in the rotation with both those teams. He's quite friendly with Draymond Green. He's very friendly with Kevin Durant. So I did put Warriors and Nets be my dream. But if I had to guess, I don't know. I just see him back at the Knicks. I don't know. I think Portland makes the most sense for him personally, but I just got this Knicks feeling, so I'm going to go with that. Would your thoughts be Portland, I guess?
I think Portland, but here's a curveball.
Mm-hmm.
What if he went somewhere like, although they haven't really got any cap space to sign him, but somewhere like the Bucks, just to help them spread the floor a bit more?
Yeah, he would suit the Bucks. I don't think cap space is an issue with him, because I think he's just going to sign for a minimum, to be honest. I think unless it's a team like the Knicks, a team that's doing it as like a swan song, you might sign like a 5, 6, 7 mil deal for 1 year. But any contender, I think, is just signing for the minimum or whatever cap space they've got left at the end of free agency. If it's like 3 million, he'll just sign for 3 million. I think he'll just take whatever he can get. So yeah, the Bucks would be another one that would need him. Yeah, that'd be quite a good one, I think. Well, no, maybe not Boston, but yeah, Philadelphia or the Bucks are a team that needs shooting. So yeah, nice one. Cool.
Nice.
Well, that's the end of our little chat about free agency. Let's move on to the trade machine then. So we're going to do a quick fire. I've got 10 names. I'll tell you who they are and tell me where you think they get traded and why, just as quick as you can. Or tell me if you think they don't get traded at all. That's another option.
I'll go with my gut.
Cool. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Right. The trade machine has spat out a all-star point guard. Mr. Chris Paul is the first name. Where is he going and why? Or is he going to stay in OKC?
He's going to the Knicks for a payday. He's staying there. Nice. He's gonna lap up the limelight. He's gonna make loads of money off endorsements. He's gonna develop the young players, because on the contract he's on, I can't see him being traded to a championship contender. So that's my thoughts for Chris Paul.
Nice. Because we're running long, I won't give my opinions on the trades. I'll just let you chat about the trade. So next one, he's a big that's in a slightly precarious predicament. It's Mr. Miles Turner of the Pacers. Where do you think Miles goes, or do you think that he stays for another year in Indiana?
Yeah, I think Miles stays. I don't see many teams wanting to trade for him, and I don't see Indiana wanting to get rid of him. So I think Miles stays.
Okay, cool. In terms of rumors, the Warriors and Celtics, the ones that are linked with him. More center talk.
Yeah.
Next one is another Pacer, heavily linked with every single team. It's Mr. Victor Oladipo. Do you think he stays as well because of the injuries, or you think he goes somewhere? And where would he go?
I know he's been rumored, with a lot of teams. The teams that are coming out massively at the moment are Boston and Miami. I think Miami is a better place for him to go. I understand why Boston, because they kind of want to swap him for Hayward, which seems pointless. An injured guard for an injured guard.
Yeah.
So I think he does get traded to the Heat. Maybe they sign and trade Goran Dragic if the Pacers would take him.
Cool, nice. I think that's the first trade that you've given us. Oh no, second.
So, yeah.
We got the Knicks CP3 Melo combo going on the other trade. Next, we have someone who I think can still contribute. Doesn't quite fit modern day NBA, but he's in a bit of a dead spot. It's Mr. DeMar DeRozan of the San Antonio Spurs. He's on a lot of money, but can help a contender. Do you see him getting traded, or is he going to stay in San Antonio?
He stays. He fits the Spurs. He's on, like you said, quite a bit of money. I don't think there's a big market for him out there, so he stays with the Spurs.
Nice. So we have another player who played for the Spurs last year, heavily linked to the Clippers and Warriors. That's why I put his name in here. It's Rudy Gay, who's on. He's got an option, and they can trade him, and he's not on huge amounts of money and can help a contender. Do you think that's someone that a star team could trade for, or you think he again will just stay in San Antonio to help Pop?
No, I think he's had a bit of a resurgence this year. He could definitely go to a championship contender and help out. I think he goes to whoever's got the best picks coming back to the Spurs. So I'm sure you might be able to tell me, out of those two teams he's linked with, the Clippers and the
Warriors,
well,
yeah. Well, the Warriors
I imagine it's Golden State.
Yeah, they have a lot more options to give them. Obviously, they've got Minnesota's first round pick and a second. They've got another 2 seconds from another two teams. They've got their own first and second for 2 years. They've got more. The Clippers gave everything away for Paul George.
Yeah.
So they would not have a lot to trade apart from players, really. So maybe the Warriors then.
On that basis, Rudy Gay is going to the Warriors.
Nice. I wouldn't mind a little Ibaka, Rudy Gay signings. That'll be a championship team there. Next is the man I was kind of alluding to earlier, who plays for the Kings. He's the reason I think Bogdanovic will stay. They're really similar players, so I don't think they need both. It's Buddy Hield, who apparently wants out of the Kings. I think he's very likely to be traded, but where will he be traded to then?
Yes, 100% traded. It is just that question: where is he going to go?
He could help any team, don't we think?
Yeah, a guard that's got a very good shot, can create one as well himself. Maybe like a team looking for a third star. Maybe those Hawks might be interested. Who else could be interested? Maybe the Raptors could maybe get rid of a Kyle Lowry, perhaps, or someone a bit older on their bench, or maybe to replace Van Vliet. This is a tricky one.
Yeah, teams with cap space that could absorb him.
The Suns, perhaps?
Yeah, the Suns would have space to absorb him. Hornets, Pelicans, Kings, Pistons, Knicks, Timberwolves.
I think he's going to go to the Hornets.
Very
they
good.
Love putting a random shout in for lots of money for someone who might not actually be that good in the end.
Yeah, I think if they trade for him, they would be offering him a bigger deal, wouldn't they? So I think that's like a caveat that he would get probably a large contract. Okay, cool. We've got four more. They're all from the Eastern Conference. How boring. Two Boston players, two non-Boston players. Let's start with Mr. Aaron Gordon of the Magic. He's been linked to a lot of teams again. But will they trade him or will they keep him, Ben?
I think, realistically, I think he's staying in Orlando. I think he should leave, though. I think it will improve him massively going under some different coaching, different teammates. Yeah. I heard Andrew Wiggins for Aaron Gordon trade potentially could work.
It's similar.
But what team is looking for more of an athletic sort of wing, maybe a small power forward?
Yeah, I think Clippers, Warriors, Rockets sort of teams spring to mind again for me.
Yeah, I think Rockets could be a really good shout for him. It's just what have they got to offer going back the other way? Let's go. Let's send him to Golden State as well.
There's a lot. I don't know where they're getting this cap space from. We're on to about 4 players for them. And the issue with this is the next player.
They love the tax.
They love the tax. The next player is only on this trade machine because he's linked with Golden State. And it really, really intrigued me that it would basically be but the player is Marcus Smart of the Boston Celtics. And the rumors are it would be a trade with them swapping first-round picks so the Celtics can go up and get a center. And I think it would involve them getting another pick as well. I don't know if Pascal will be going the other way. I can't remember the rumor. But yeah, Marcus Smart seems to be quite liked by the Warriors. Do you think that happens, or is that a bit more of a pipe dream and he's going to stay in Boston?
Yeah, no chance. He's staying in Boston. That is definitely not happening.
Okay, cool. 2 more to go. Let's go with a non-Boston player next. Caris LeVert. He was the Nets. He impressed in the bubble, but he's very ball dominant, very shot heavy, and I'm not sure he fits with those 2 stars. So will they keep him as like a 6th man, or will they trade him whilst his value's high? What do you think? Trade or stay for Caris LeVert?
I think trade will benefit everybody. They can maybe get a couple more shooters back or something to replace him. I think he will go to the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, wow. If they keep Christian Wood, they got a couple of nice little pieces there with Blake Griffin. That's someone I should have put on this list.
Yeah.
Blake Griffin is not on this list. Maybe I'll add him in a minute. Cool. Let's go on to our last Boston player. Mr. Gordon Hayward is on this list. We spoke about him earlier, whether it be a sign-in trade or just a trade candidate. Do you think he gets traded? And I know if he does, it's looking like the Pacers. And that's kind of why I brought Miles Turner up, a little swap deal there. Do you think Hayward will leave, or do you think he's gonna stay in Boston for 1 more year?
Hayward for Turner makes so much more sense than like Hayward for Oladipo. So if they are going to do it, that's the way to go about it. I like that trade. And then if the Pacers can then get Oladipo to go somewhere else and maybe bring in pieces to replace those Miles Turner minutes or whatever it is they may need to fill those spots, that works for me. I like that trade a lot for Boston and for the Pacers. So let's pull the trigger on that. Let's send Hayward to the Pacers.
Okay, cool. You've contradicted yourself there because earlier you said Miles Turner was staying. So now we've got too good of an offer to turn down. So Miles Turner's off as well.
Yeah, I've rethought it and
he's going. Sabonis gets the place center. Nice. Cool. All right, one last one I'll add in because we just spoke about him for a brief second. Blake Griffin. A lot of money, but could help a lot of players. Could he reunite in New York with CP3 with the Knicks? Who knows? Or could he go to contender? Do you think Blake Griffin stays because of the contract, or you think he'll get traded to try and win a chip somewhere?
Do we know how long he's got left on that contract? It's a lot of money, isn't it?
I can tell you now. 2 seconds on the fly research. I believe I think it's one. It's either one or it's 1 year, I believe. But I'm just checking. Because he technically signed this deal, didn't he, when he was originally at the Clippers?
Yes, he did. Yeah, and they traded.
So so this year he's on the cap for 36 million, and then he has a player option next year, which he'll probably take at 39 million. So he's got this season, next season, 2 seasons left, and he's unrestricted. So someone would have to basically pay for him this year and then pay 30 odd million the year after. So does he get traded?
Who can take that hit? I mean, he injury prone,
Knicks,
but
Knicks, Hawks, Kings. That's about it.
Knicks, I think. If he's going anywhere, it's going to the Knicks, isn't it?
Oh, you're getting me excited with this Blake Griffin CP3 Melo combo. I'm in 2015 again.
That is the only issue.
I think he'll end up staying because it's too much of a pay grade. Even though I agree with you, I think the Knicks and Hawks are going to be the only options. Maybe the Heat if they lose a few players and they can't get who they want. But I see him staying in Detroit.
I think Detroit like him, and I think that showed when they traded Drummond instead of him. So I'm sure they're committing to seeing out his contract.
Cool. Well, that is the trade machine done. Before we leave, I just want to mention one thing for anyone who's listening to this and thinking about who their teams might get. And this might intrigue you, Ben, as well. In terms of top 10 in practical cap space, so this is basically with them declining any options that they're probably going to decline. So it's not guaranteed cap space, but it's potential practical cap space. You've got the Hawks of 49.5 million.
Yeah.
The Knicks with 48.5 million. The Pistons with 37.5. So I do think that Christian Wood idea that you said might happen. I think they could try and pay him a load of money. The Kings 31 million, the Pelicans 29.5, the Hornets 28, the Heat, which surprises a few people, 24.5, the Suns at 20 million, so I think they're going to be up for a few deals. The Raptors at 19.5, and the Timberwolves at 14. Are there any names there that kind of surprise you and you think they might do a little bit more? Maybe the Suns and Timberwolves or the Raptors?
Yeah, I'd like to see the Suns get a few more pieces and really kick on from that bubble 8-0. That'd be really, really good to see.
The Knicks and Hawks are going to do something big, aren't they? Surely that amount of money, they're gonna sign someone this summer. Well, you got Giannis next year, I guess. But
that's the thing. I think the Knicks are holding out for that, aren't they? As they always do, and then they'll miss on the superstar and sign somebody mid-level for a max contract. I've got great faith in them. I think the Hawks are definitely getting another big player, whether it's Gallinari or Ingram or someone like that. I think either of those will fit perfectly for them. Those would be my team that I think are going to make the biggest key move.
Yeah, I think the Hawks or Knicks as well, even if they don't make a good move, I think they could take someone's bad salary just to get an extra get an extra draft pick. Because if someone's got a player for this year that they don't want and they want to create cap space for this summer or for this trade deadline, I think either of those teams could easily absorb someone who's on 20, 30 million for 1 year, and that wouldn't hinder them having to go at Giannis next year because obviously the contract would end. So I agree with you. I think they're going to be big players. I think the Hawks are kind of not in win now mode, but I think Trae Young wants to win, so that'd be an interesting one. But yeah, that's all we've got time for today, Ben. Thank you very much for playing my trade machine game. I enjoyed it.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
Cool. And the plan is we're going to get into our draft content next week. We'll hear a little bit more about the NBA plan, and if free agency is moved up, we're going to do some more free agency pieces as well. So everybody watch out for that. And we will speak to you next week. Thanks again, Ben.
And to you.